Hi, I'm Cassie Brider, and this is Empowered Trans Woman. And today I have a licensed marriage and family therapist and also school counselor who has been practicing in the state of California for the last 4 years. Please welcome Christine MacInnis to the show. Hi, Christine. How are you?
Hi, Cassie. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's always fun to talk to you. And I'm glad that we got this opportunity to talk because you wrote an article recently that I thought was really, really timely, which was how to support your trans teen or trans kids in this time where the viewers might be listening to us by the time all this is over, but we're currently living through quarantine and lockdown after the COVID-19 crisis. So you wrote this article and it really brought a whole bunch of topics to talk about. But I also just wanted to learn a little bit about how you do the voodoo that you do.
Well, I'm very passionate about what I do. I have been working with gender expansive teens and young adults, and now older adults have been coming to me, which is absolutely glorious because I really enjoy working with all age levels. But I really am passionate about gender and how it really is fluid in our society now. We really should have been this way all along. I don't see us as being a strict binary. I find that whole topic very fascinating, that we really do fall under this construct that we created and that man made to categorize people and how we categorize ourselves. And I've been on this gender journey, I call it, for myself for the past 4 years in the work that I'm doing with clients, basically because of one client. I had my very first client be a trans male. And in discovering that process and watching them unfold, I really woke up. It was like my wake up moment that gender is not what we thought it to be, that it's a construct, that it's not real, and that what really is innate is what our experience of our gender is. Our identity is so unique. It's like our fingerprints. It is not something that everybody can just say, well, you're a woman, you're a man. You might have those sex organs that you're born with, but other than that, it's not really a reality. So in the work that I do, it's really helping clients to go on their own gender journey, and I stand witness to it, and I'm affirming it and celebrating it. But I'm also helping them deal with a very difficult society that has not woke up yet 100%, that has not gotten to understand that gender is not a strict binary construct that we believe it to be. So they have to contend with not only their families and their friends and their employers, but just society as a whole, media, different, objectives that they hear from all fronts, from religious groups, from you name it. Everybody has an opinion right now on transgender folks. And so I'm there to help them navigate through that and find that affirmation that they desperately need, that they can be who they are.
I'm also glad that you're doing that work. You said something recently that really caught my attention. You said that more than helping a transgender client navigate their transition, you're helping them navigate what it's like to deal with society and the way that society treats them. And I thought that was pretty poignant. Can you expand on that a little bit?
So sadly, because we still live in a strict binary system, overall, and that our whole, literally everybody's set up that way. Our schools, our medical systems, our families, everybody has this belief system based on really nothing. It's just something that we created as a society to categorize people. And when you start to understand yourself and your identity is very different from that, it is incredibly jarring because you do internalize those beliefs. You do hear them on a regular basis. And when you yourself don't feel them, there's this kind of discord that occurs. And it's named actually in therapeutic world as internalized transphobia. So you're hearing transphobic messages from the rest of society, and you start to believe it yourself. And so that causes a lot of depression, anxiety, and just general frustration for the person that is finally recognizing, hey, I know who I am. Why doesn't everybody else get it?
There's something that's really important that you just touched on is this concept of internalized transphobia. The first time that I started questioning myself in terms of gender, the key feelings I felt were shame and fear. The narrative inside my head was along the lines of, please God, please let me not be one of these people, because I was already so aware of the fact that this is a marginalized demographic and that this is something that is not okay to be. I'm a big fan of Hannah Gadsby, who is a lesbian comedian from Australia. And she grew up in Tasmania at a time when being homosexual was actually against the law. until the mid 90s, I think. And she has a line that really resonated. It actually made me cry, where she said, "So by the time I realized that I was a lesbian, it was already too late because I was already a homophobe." And that
That's
really hit me really hard. So fighting against this internalized transphobia is probably a large part of a therapist's work.
I definitely feel that's part of my role, is to challenge those beliefs. So and I work from a CBT, a cognitive behavioral perspective. So I believe what we think then manifests itself into behaviors that can be less than beneficial to people. So I listen for those transphobia comments come up out of my clients' mouths, and gently reframe them and point out to them just the beauty and the specialness that comes from owning who you really are. And I think being a cis person, not trans myself, also gives a special frame to that, because I'm saying from a person who has not lived it, who doesn't experience that. I've been very privileged to be the gender I was born into. That to me is a gift and a privilege. It's not something that I take lightly. And so when they hear me then say to them, your experience is beautiful and it is genuine and it is you and you are authentic and you're real and I see you, it does reframe for them that the society itself is the one that has the problem. They're not the problem.
Yeah, it's interesting how minorities in general immediately get othered in different ways. We think really highly of blue eyes, which are less common than brown eyes, but we don't think very highly of redheads, for example. In some societies, being a redhead was synonymous with a lot of questionable traits. It has nothing to do with psychological traits, it's just a hair color. So
Right.
you work a lot with teens and kids, right?
Right. So because I was a school for 25 years before I started my private practice, I was uniquely drawn, of course, to that population, having so much experience with them. So I started my practice with teens because I was a school counselor at high school level. So naturally, my referrals came from that population. And it's actually so fun to watch young people go on their gender journey to figure out who they are, because they're definitely influenced by what they hear and see. So they may actually come in believing one thing about themselves, but once they have time to process and really think about it and really explore it, they might come out with something totally different. So it's a fluid process too. It's finding out your identity for everyone, regardless of whether you're born a cis person or a transgender person. You still have to figure out who you really are. So the gender is just another layer to that. And I think if we really started having open discussions about it, everybody would start to explore these gender norms that we have and realize that they're really false. They're not true at all. And we would uniquely get to be ourselves, regardless of what that is. So I could be a female who enjoys being female, but also embrace my male side, embrace the fact that I'm a very strong person, embrace the fact that I really enjoy a great debate and I like to be the winner of a competition. These things that are considered male traits. Instead of calling them male and female traits, why don't we just call them traits? They're just things about people.
Yeah, I think that the society as a whole needs to do a lot of growing up in terms of dismantling misogyny, dismantling patriarchy, and dismantling these assumptions about all these different characteristics which are traditionally male or traditionally female, and just allowing ourselves to be. I heard something that I really liked recently that said, well, how many genders are there? I roll. And the answer is 7.1 billion genders.
Perfect. That's
Because
exactly
that's
how
how many people there are on the planet.
exactly.
I think
And
of gender quite a lot in terms of I'm left-handed. In fact, I'm in mind of this because I bought my daughter a guitar, and I didn't think about the fact that she is left-handed, and the guitar came strung to right-handed people, so we're gonna have to deal with that. But so we got to talking, so we got to talking about left-handed and right-handed, and this is a bimodal distribution. You have people who are dominant with their left hand and dominant with their right hand, but it's not entirely binary. There are some people, and this is the case with Emma. She was struggling and saying it really doesn't matter that much because she writes with her left hand, but there are so many things that she does with her right hand, and she thinks she's going to define with the right hand. So we're going to experiment, but there are people who are ambidextrous. There are people who will perform certain actions with the left hand or certain actions with the right hand. There are people that would have inherently been left-handed, but were indoctrinated into using the right hand. So you have many different manifestations of what would be primarily a bimodal distribution. You have left-handed people, right-handed people, but it's not just as simple as that. And I think that as a flawed analogy, of course, but as an analogy, ports pretty well to gender, right?
100%. And it's funny, I want to go back to something you said earlier about misogyny and patriarchy. And there, a lot of these gender beliefs, I think, are so firmly held, and not just by men, but by women, because of this fear of that imbalance, of a power imbalance occurring. And if right now in our society, it's still male driven. And the minute we take away these roles, the minute we take away these structures, what does that leave? Do I lose my power? Do I no longer be in charge? What does that look like? So I think it is interesting that gender has become such a fighting ground, really, because it's become this thing of power and control, when really, what if we gave it up? What if we stopped having power and control over anyone or anything? What would that really look like, and what would our society be like?
Yeah, there's a lot of people who are unwilling to make that experiment or unwilling to make that leap, but luckily...
Oh, no, because they have the power. Would you give up your power if you had it? Probably
True,
not.
exactly. Luckily, new generations have a much more fluid energy that they approach this with. I want to ask you one question. I think a lot of clients would have... Actually, this is a twofold question. So, one side of the fear of a new client might be, well, this therapist is going to agree with everything that my kid says, and they're going to make my kid transgender. And then the other side of that fear might be, well, this person's going to be a gatekeeper, and this person is going to question everything I say, and they're going to disbelieve my gender journey. So how would you address those fears?
Well, I think there's always a fear when you're entering a therapeutic relationship that you're not going to be heard, that the person might sway you, that we have special powers. By the way, we don't. We're not super people. We don't have the way to influence people or control people. Rather, I believe it's a symbiotic relationship. And so I don't assume anyone's anything. I don't assume anyone's gender. I don't assume anyone's sexuality. I don't assume anyone's belief systems. That's for you to uncover and just disclose to me and help me, help you work through that. Especially with teenagers, they're very fluid. And their belief systems change. They believe who they are at one point, maybe based on different information. But once we get to gently explore it and really look into it and figure out who they really are, they're determining that. But I'm just a guide. I'm not somebody here to gatekeep or give encouragement towards any direction. The direction comes from the client themselves. Being an informed person is way better than being an ill-informed person that could actually then try to sway someone one way or the other. I am actually the most neutral of all because I really truly understand it in a very unique way. I don't believe a lot of people do. I think people want to put a label and want to define. And I want people to be able to discover who they are. That's it. There's no agenda.
I love that. What has your personal practice over the last 4 years left you with as kind of like the key salient point about the trans experience, or what you would tell cis people about trans people?
I would say stop being so afraid. I don't know what the fear is. And you probably had some very erroneous beliefs about what a transgender person, who they really are as humans, and take some time to get to know what that really means. Don't just believe what the media says. Don't just believe what you were trained to believe as a child and what you grew up with. We've had a lot of misnomers and a lot of, things that are just not true. And I think if you took the time to actually get to know people who live this experience, you would find they're just as deep and varied as everybody else in our human experience. So stop labeling them as one type of person. That's just not true.
I really appreciate that. And thanks for all your time. This has been Empowered Trans Woman. And thank you, Christine. And we'll catch you on the next episode.
Thanks, Cassie.